All right, y'all. Pushing Wild Black here, and I gotta just read something real quick. I know this channel was specifically sports and journal entries, but sometimes I dip into cultural criticism, and there's just been a lot of stuff going on. And as a Christian, and as a black man, and as a moderate, I have to respond to this article that I just read, and just to give my opinion on it and some other things about the Trump situation and what's going on in this country right now. So let me read you this article and go from there. Okay, so we're at the Christian Post. Let's see how. We're at the Christian Post, and let's see. Black Christian leaders detest claim that Trump is the driver of racial division in America. And this was published today. Just went on my feed today. All right. Washington, a group of conservative black pastors and intellectual leaders Monday defended President Donald Trump amid criticism of his initial response to the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia last weekend. While some, like Charlottesville Mayor Mike Singer, had claimed there is a direct link between the events in Charlottesville and the choices Trump made in his 2016 presidential campaign, conservative African American clergy members and scholars and political activists decried such an argument in the Monday press conference at the National Press Club. All right. Organized by the Center of Urban Renewal and Education, CURE, in Washington, D.C. based nonprofit and think tank. Let me see. I lost my place. Organized by the Center of Urban Renewal and Education, CURE, a Washington-based non-for-profit think tank founded by conservative political commentator and activist Star Parker, and the press conference was originally scheduled for the purpose of praising the Trump administration's plan to revitalize inner cities, but given the events of last weekend where clashes between white supremacists and counter-protesters became deadly, Charlottesville and the related issue of racial conflict dominated much of the talk in the news conference. Parker and various African American leaders standing with her at the podium asked whether it is disingenuous to pretend that President Trump is not the driver for a lot of division we see in this country. Reverend Derek McCoy, CURE's executive vice president, who also directs the CURE National Clergy Network, was the first to respond to such a question. One thing you need to understand, you are saying that the president is the instigator, and I think that's absolutely wrong. No, it isn't. No, it isn't disingenuous. McCoy asserted. The president made his comments, and we are not standing up here and saying we are best of friends with everything the president does, but he is in an office that we will respect, that we all respect. If we are looking about how we can move forward as a country, we're trying to make sure that we can do that collectively together. Corrigan Vaughn, a political activist who ran against Democrat Representative Elijah Cummings of Maryland in the 2016 election, argued that those in the media who blame Trump for racial tension in the United States are trying to turn Trump into a villain. Don't make our commander-in-chief a villain when in actuality it is more the villainous of the media in terms of making something where nothing is, Vaughn stated. William Allen, professor of political philosophy at Michigan State, who formerly served as the chairman of the United States Commission on Civil Rights, also responded by saying, I will say this. I will say this about the repeated ascription of President Trump as the driver of hateful speech in our country. There are two things wrong with this view. The first thing wrong is that we pretend to hide behind blaming President Trump for our failures. Allen, who served as the dean of James Madison College at Michigan State University, added that Americans have gotten away from the principle of standing up for free speech, for the free speech rights of others. He specifically recalled the time that when the American Civil Liberties Union defended the right for Nazi supporters to wear Nazi uniforms and display swastikas when the National Socialist Party of America marched through the predominantly Jewish community of Skokie, Illinois. There was a time where we celebrated the Skokie, what we might call the Skokie principle, when the far right marched through Skokie, Illinois, and the left defended their right to march and speak, even hateful speech. We are no longer celebrating the Skokie principle in our country, Allen said. We stopped celebrating the Skokie principle long before Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency. Now that I actually agree with. We don't really have a place for healthy discourse, but that's not the issue here. If we have a problem, the problem is we have lost our way. We have people that are wandering in the desert who have lost their way. Allen continued, it is not going to do you much good to blame Moses. You gotta ask why have the people lost their way? Where did they lose their faith, and how can it be restored? In short, I would encourage you and all who embrace this particular meme to challenge themselves to find better ways to express hopeful expectations of humanity. Parker, a syndicated columnist who ran for the House of Representatives in 2010, added that some of the blame for the situation facing America today can be placed on the alt-left. I would like to see the discussion continue because the president was accurate when he said there are both sides. Parker said, I would like for us to finally address the alt-right and the alt-left. The instigators that continue this discussion that racism is so inherent in our society that they are going to look for it endlessly and spark the tensions of the alt-right. The alt-right was sent underground. They have been emboldened because of the alt-left. Parker warned that Americans had a hard choice to make. We are either going to be biblical and free, or we are going to be secular in status. That is the cultural war. There is no need in us denying that we are not in one, Parker said. It has been intensifying over time now, and it is coming to culmination that we can drag each other and every one of us into another civil war. We don't want that, and the clergy will stand up and support the president and his effort to make sure that we have this discussion, and we will have it civilly. McCoy stated that another factor in the situation is the shifting debate on college campuses. We are saying you can only have one thought process, and that is the only thing that can be allowed within the spectrum of our country. I think that is wrong. McCoy said, so you have this alt-left, alt-right, and these fractions in society that are happening. But you got to understand the debate is being shut down. And debate is something that has always been the foundational principles of America, where we can foster, flourish, and grow together and learn from each other. After receiving criticism from political leaders from both parties for not directly naming white supremacists and other far-right extremists in his initial statement responding to the violence in Charlottesville, Trump condemned white supremacists, the KKK, and other far-right extremists by calling them repugnant while speaking during the White House event Monday. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals, thugs, including KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups, are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans, Trump said. All right, so that's it. And also, there's one more sentence. During this weekend's protest, one woman died, and at least 19 were injured when a car plowed into the counter protesters. Okay. Here's the thing. When there is a alt, first of all, the term alt-right is, and I hate that term because we don't really want to say what it is. It's a very nice way of calling neo-Nazism and neo-Klanism and white supremacy. It's a very nice new package of what that is. That's what the alt-right is. That's what it means. The alt-left, because apparently that's a term now, there are extreme people on the left and there are extreme people on the right. The extreme people on the right are white supremacists. Most of the people, when you talk about alt-right supporters, they are white supremacist groups, period. All left supporters are very, very extreme as far as very, very extreme social justice warriors, very, very extreme feminists, very, very extreme leftists like liberals. The term alt-left didn't exist until President Trump said it. So that's a new thing. They're extremists in both sides, but generally when you speak of alt-right, you speak of people that are white supremacists. That's the neat little package they're putting themselves under now. So miss me with the alt-left and alt-right things. That's a false equivalency. And look, man, this was published before the remarks earlier today, where he basically doubled down on what he initially said in his initial statement. And the both sides thing. Look, the alt-right, as they call themselves, is white supremacy. It's neo-Nazism. It's neo-Klanism. That has to be shut down. They shouldn't have a voice. Now, people don't understand what the First Amendment actually means. You can say whatever you want to say. The government has no right to come after you. The government has no right to put you in jail. So and I'm from Illinois, they still do Skokie. The Klan still has, because we just call it the Klan rally. The Klan still has, to my knowledge, they still have these rallies every year. Okay? You can say they can say what they want, because the government can't force them not to have the rally. Okay? But it doesn't mean that people have to accept your point of view. That has the right to be shut down. A couple things here. The whole reason for the protest, and I said this on my Facebook page, the whole reason for the protest was to protest the fact that Virginia changed the name from Lee Park to Emancipation Park, and they were going to take down a statue celebrating General Robert Lee, the Confederate general. And not only was he a Confederate general, but he was a supporter of the Reconstruction and the Jim Crow laws from when Lincoln got assassinated. So he wasn't a friend to the black community. He wasn't an ally to the black community. Do your research before you get up there as black people. And I'm a Christian and I'm a moderate, which means I have conservative principles. But you have the right to say that this is ridiculous. You also have the right to say, that, which I said on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, the president was lazy in his initial response to this. He was lazy. And that was written. His second response was written. It was more prepared. Unlike today, when he said that he wanted to get facts before he makes statements, he's never gotten facts before he's made statements. He's always shot off the cuff. But with this, you don't want to shoot off. Hence, today, he shot off the cuff today. I read a tweet from the White House saying that he went rogue in that conference. He wasn't supposed to ask any questions. Okay, but he took control of the conference. He took control of the media session. He answered questions, and basically, because there was no teleprompter and there was nobody telling him what to say, he said basically from his heart. Here's the deal, man. Like, you can be Christian and you can be conservative and you can say, because there are black Republicans out there, okay? And you can respect the office of the presidency. That doesn't mean you can't criticize the president. You can criticize the president. You're allowed. What President Trump did in his initial response was lazy. And he wasn't genuine during his second response. And he doubled down on what he said Sunday or Saturday, because it was Saturday. It was Saturday, like at 3:00 in the afternoon when he did his initial statement. There is a belief. Matter of fact, I've heard 3, but I know for sure there's been at least one alt-right member that's on his cabinet, still on his cabinet. There have been rumors of up to 3. I know for sure there's one. Okay. I did polls for the election. There was a lot, and I'm not saying the people that voted for Trump were necessarily racist, but the base that claim to be alt-right members, I spoke to a lot of the people that may or may not be in that base. Yeah, that was actually a thing. Most of the people don't like. Most people that I spoke to when doing polls, they didn't like Obama, specifically just because he was him. They didn't like immigration. They thought Trump was going to be a savior of the country. I actually got that from a person. And this alt-right contingent, this neo-Nazi contingent, they have publicly stated that, hey, we voted for him because of what he said. The ban on Muslims, the illegal immigrants, his illegal immigrant stance, the fact that he used to make a point to discredit President Obama his entire presidency. He was a birther. Come on, man. Like, he's been divisive ever since even before he was running for president. And he used his divisiveness to build a base. Now, he's rich and he's charismatic and he traveled to places that the Democratic Party didn't go to. So he was able to reach that poor working class white base to build his to build his momentum. And he's not the starter of the racial divide, because quite honestly, you can make the argument that what's bubbling up to the surface now has been simmering since President Obama's came in office for 8 years. That's when the initial, this country has been taken away from us, started by these alt-right groups. hence the term "Make America Great Again." He used that term on purpose because what was simmering for 8 years was certain segments of white America felt disenfranchised. He played on that. So the idea that he might not have started this, but the idea that he isn't divisive, and the idea that he's certainly not helping the racial discussion here. You have the right in this country to say, I want to say this real quick, and I've spent half my life in the South, not in Virginia, but in Dallas, Dallas, Texas. There's this idea, because I've had this discussion over the Confederate flag 2 years ago, and that was the issue. There's an idea that, like, there's this old South, and there's this old, like, heritage that we gotta hold on to, right? That honestly a lot of white folks have, and some black folks, which is surprising, but I digress. And I heard yesterday that there was a Virginia official, and he was on CNN, and he was talking about, they asked him about Trump, and he was saying, like, he's disappointed, but Trump did, you know, say what he said, and I believe in what he said. And basically at the end of the conversation, they asked him about the park, and they asked him about the statue. Now, he said basically that the whole purpose of the actual protest wasn't about the statue. It was about them, the neo-Nazis, getting their message across. No, it was really about the statue being removed. The other part was a bonus. And they asked him, do you think that the statue should be removed? And he was like, no, the statue shouldn't be removed, but that's a council decision. I respect what the Virginia Council did on the matter, but I don't think it should be taken down because, quote, we can't erase dark moments in our history. Okay, couple things here. The idea, normally when you erect statues to people, you are celebrating them or you're honoring them. Most of the time, this isn't a history lesson. So unless it's a museum, and it wasn't a museum, they were honoring a Confederate general. When you honor Confederate symbols like that, you are honoring treason and you are honoring racism. That is what you're honoring. The very fact that people decided to not to continue to honor racism and treason is a good thing. And for the president to, in his initial statement, ignore this and to double down on it today. And again, the article was published today, but the actual press conference was yesterday. So the issues today, they didn't know about, nor did they speak on. So I gotta give that prerequisite here. But nah, man, you can be conservative, you can be Christian, and you can say our president you can be critical of our president. As a Christian, I can honestly tell you he was lazy. As a moderate, I can honestly tell you he was lazy. And based on his base and based on what he used to get in this office, it wasn't uniting. It never has been uniting. He's saying it now, but the very fact that he doubled down on it today is telling me that he's not a united force in this country at all. He's divisive, and he has been divisive since he's been in office. And I bring up the fact that he's lazy because this man has made a point to criticize anybody with swiftness who has been critical of him via his Twitter account, to the point that they have asked him, the White House representatives have asked him, hey man, you might want to not tweet so much. And he literally said, no, you're not going to take my social media away from me. The very fact that when Kenneth Frazier left this morning or yesterday, the very fact that they left and he, within seconds of him announcing his resignation, tweeted something. The very fact that he tweeted within seconds of Kenneth Frazier's resignation is a problem. And it tells me that not only does he not necessarily go and look into finding all the facts first, he is very, very off the cuff and speaks very rashly and very quickly when he's upset. And the very fact that a situation in Charlottesville where someone died happened Saturday, and it took you Monday to call out white supremacy and then double down on it today. I'm good, man. I'm good. You don't have to. I'm tired of hearing people defend him. I'm not going to defend him. Not on this. Anyway, that's a little off the cuff. That wasn't really prepared. I'm upset about this because, I knew that, like, when the Charlottesville thing happened, I wasn't surprised. I was sad, but I was like, this is America. This is what this country is. We don't want to say it is what it is, but this is what this country is. You know what I'm saying? But to have our commander-in-chief just not, I don't know. To have our commander-in-chief just not really understand what his job is to do as far as uniting our country in times like this. And to be honest, this is a deal because it's here. But I mean, this isn't like this wasn't, a country threatening war or like a mass scale like 9/11 thing. I don't want to know what happens if something like that happens. Like if North Korea really feels froggy, because that's been a thing too. If North Korea really feels froggy and something happens, what are you going to do? Because I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing the galvanizing force. And just because, I want to say this too in closing, just because the president says that he has a plan for urban renewal, doesn't mean he's going to come through with the urban renewal. Every president in this country has had a plan for urban renewal, and our cities are still in dire straits in some cases. Anyway, I'm done. Pushing Wild Black out. Later.